Many of you may not have the manifestation of salvation in your life. You may not see that change, right? So let me explain something to you, because some of you, sometimes when you, especially when you've been trying for a long time, you can sometimes get discouraged. There's no shame in that. You sometimes get discouraged, which is why the Lord gave us such an encouraging word, right? All too often, though, we don't know the difference between a repentant heart and this, or I'm going to call it a strategy of forgiveness. For example, suppose you have an issue or a problem, and sometimes people want that issue or problem to be resolved or go away. And so we learned that if you ask for forgiveness, you're brand new again, you're clean, you can be forgiven. And with that, we try to be in right standing with the Lord, maintain that right standing, correct? And it's very difficult, isn't it? Because you're fighting off certain habits and certain things you normally do. And sometimes you feel like you're not qualified, or you're sitting on the outside of the process of the living God. Like you're trying, but you're not sure if it's sticking or not, right? If it's really, if it's productive. There's a difference between asking for forgiveness and having a repentant heart. So let me explain this to you briefly, because personally, I would like many of you to try this again, but to understand something first. And this is not to intrude in your lives or to be judgmental about anything, all right? It is simply another way of thinking about a forgiveness in the context of what Jesus gave us, and personally as he's given it to me. Because there was a time when I would look around in the world and see nothing but darkness. I wanted nothing to do with the world, right? I didn't. It was too dark, too violent, and everything else. But at the same time, I noticed within myself things that would manifest often that had no business manifesting. Things I would do, certain things in life, they have to change. And so one day I did ask for forgiveness. And I said, okay, this is going to be a brand new thing here. Lord, forgive me for this. And I had a list of forgiving things I need to be forgiven for. And at the end of that prayer, that petition, I said, okay, I'm clean. Right? I'm clean. And this was in my younger days. So I'm going to be quite frank with you. And then during that time, a soldier walks in. And when he walked in, he's let's just say he was substandard, which kindled something in me. And he said something out of the way, and so I responded in this habitual response, or a responsive habit in the armed services, which was not conducive of a Christian at all, right? So when I did that, I said, I got mad at that guy. I said, well, I just asked for forgiveness. And when you know it, a knucklehead walks in and it causes me, right? Now, analyze what I'm saying. I said, this guy walks in and causes me to stumble, to say something I didn't want to say. Now we're going to ask for forgiveness again. It felt like everything was undone, right? Later on that same day, the Lord taught me a big lesson. He showed me what a repentant heart was. And he showed me what asking for forgiveness is, and then trying to maintain righteousness somehow, how that doesn't work. Right? Anybody ever do that? You ask for forgiveness. It's not 10 minutes. You engage a person and you said something or did something you weren't supposed to do because you were confronted by a person almost instantly, and all of what you were asking for forgiveness for went out the window. Anybody ever do that? What the Lord taught me is to have a repentant heart is the goal here. Not just to ask for forgiveness, because you do that 1,000 times a day and go right back into the same dirt you came out of. Right? When you ask for forgiveness, all of a sudden you're trying to maintain the status quo of salvation with the Lord, and that doesn't work out too well, because then you forcefully end up putting people out of your life. You dodge people and everything else. You start limiting yourself with interaction, and we forget that we're made as lights to be put in the darkness. So that doesn't work. You don't run away from darkness, right? You shine a light on it. You don't run away. And for the most part, a person who asks for forgiveness and then they try to maintain righteousness, right? What they end up doing is taking everything in their lives that can cause them to stumble, or every person, and they start pushing people away. They start becoming a recluse. They get away from everything. That's the only way they can maintain righteousness. That is not what the Lord put you here for, right? For example, Jesus walked in, you might as well say, a bar, where tax collectors and whoremongers and everything else was in there. And he was talking to them. And they said, well, look at your rabbi. And what's he doing in there? He's eating and drinking with the drunkards, right? But where he was found was very significant. Now, Jesus was not moved by that. But why? He showed me why. See, because I thought about that, and I said, wait, Lord, this way I'm doing it is the way that was taught to me. You know, ask for forgiveness and then try to maintain righteousness somehow, and you'll be good to go. I said, that's not working for me. And I already told you guys, I'm like a kid on Christmas. If the toy has no batteries, I'm going to let you know that what is this? This is nothing without the batteries. What is this? When the Lord taught me about a repentant heart, however, everything was altered. It's so funny, too, because I tried so hard to be righteous on my own. It did not work. I'm just telling you right now, it didn't work. It's not that I was a bad guy. It's that the small things would get me. For example, you're walking through your house in the middle of the night. You stub your toe. If any iniquity is in your language, it's coming out right there when you stub that little bitty tiny toe. Right? With a lot of oofs. It'll come out in a heartbeat. You may get startled by something. If something's coming out that's not right. So that way it never worked. So let's talk about a repentant heart. As I continued out through that day, going into other days, I began to see things on a deeper level. It's almost like the Lord opened my eyes. And what I saw was so different from what I initially saw that my heart began to change based upon what I saw. See, at first, I saw nothing but darkness in the world, right? And I wanted that darkness to go away, and I didn't want to be a part of that darkness. So I did like everybody else did. I started to separate myself from the darkness. But then I would read over and over again where the Lord said, I send you as sheep among wolves. That began to change things. Of all things in my life, right? There's never a time when I doubted Christ. I knew he was the Christ. I knew that God was God. I knew what their standard was. I knew I couldn't keep those standards by myself, and so the Lord opened my eyes. And when he showed me the world again, that's when he began to show me the people that were stuck in iniquity like it was glue or a fly trap. They were stuck. They could have gotten out with the right movement, but because they could not see, they struggled, right? At that moment, I could see how destructive sin was on any level, how it leads up to the killing of an individual, how consuming it is. And at that moment, I thought about Christ. And I said, Lord, I've been giving you nothing but excuses. My prayers have been excuses. My prayers have been an attempt for you to excuse my behavior while I chose to keep it. And when I saw what sin really was and the damage it really does, listen, not through the unrighteous, but through the righteous. It's even hurtful to talk about because when you see it, it's very damaging. But the Lord opened my eyes and he showed me how easy somebody can be damaged by those who represent Christ. How easily children can be damaged by those who push them to the side while they get on with the business, they say, of the Lord. How the righteous lift up the righteous, but point fingers at the unrighteous. He showed me these things. And at that moment when I saw too much, my desire for sin left. That's what happened. When I saw the damage and the penalty that the innocent pay for the sin that would operate through me, it sickened me. It sickened me and me. I got sick of myself, no longer justifying myself, no longer saying, Lord, I can't do this by myself, this, that. I no longer said that. Because a repentant heart developed in me, which is this. When you get sick of the sin because you see the destruction and what it really does, you lose your desire to be a part of sin, period. And when you lose that desire, when you lose that desire to stand out in view of men, when you lose that desire to be number one or the first one, to have this and have that and all this competitive nonsense, when you lose that desire to play a role in the world's systems, which do nothing but kill men while they're on their feet, when you lose that desire, you're not trying to make a name for yourself anymore. And your desire is not to engage in sinful practices anymore. That's when it's so easy to overcome sin. Because with that repentant heart is a loss of a desire to sin in the first place. When you lose that desire, that's when you turn away. That's when you lost your taste for going back to that sinful life. And that's when the change comes. That's a repentant heart. A repentant heart is one that is not making excuses for the sin, but loses its desire to be a part of it. When you have a repentant heart, you have a desire for Christ, but no desire for sin. See, when you lose your desire or your taste for sin, sin can walk right up to you in your face. You'll turn away from it. It's almost like a person who goes to a restaurant, and if they like a pregnant woman, you pregnant women know about this, when you get sick of a food during pregnancy, you're just not going to touch it again. Even the smell of it's going to make you sick. So it's much like that with sin. When sin comes, you're so sickened by it, you just turn away. You don't care if it's there or not. You're not going to partake of it. It can no longer tempt you. And that is the key. Once you have a repentant heart, you cannot be tempted in that thing again. Never. A repentant heart comes when you see the truth of sin. You know in the Bible when it says the wages of sin is death? It's bad when you see the innocent hurt because of sin. The sin that we so easily give ourselves a pass on. A repentant heart is very different than our first notion of asking for forgiveness and trying to maintain some standard of religion. No, a repentant heart never brags. It does not want to be a part of sin anymore. It turns away as Lot turned away from Sodom and Gomorrah, and it never looks back because it has no desire. Lot's wife was tempted to look back. Why? Because she did not develop that repentant heart. A repentant heart is one that will have no desire for sin, and thus you turn away from it. You're not going to go back to it again. You have no desire for it. See, most people have tried this 1,000 ways. They really have. And for the most part, they ask for forgiveness, and then they try to forcefully maintain some type of righteousness by moving the elements of life. You don't have to do that. It's time for God's children to see sin for what it is, and it is the Father that opens the eyes of you and me. See, I didn't do this by myself. What happened was I admitted, but I could not maintain this vicious cycle of asking for forgiveness and sinning again. That element, once I noticed that element, I said, Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't even maintain righteousness. That's when he began to open my eye. When I saw what it really did, when I saw sin, how it affects everything and interacts all the time. How it can be found, how it grows from the smallest conversation or the smallest emotion. I wanted no part of it. I lost my desire for it. And when I lost my desire for it, because in fact, when I saw the sin, the purpose of Christ became that much more important. The cross became everything. See, those are the days when I stopped asking for things for me. My desire now rests with my fellow man, not with me. You guys know my term. I always say I know who I am. And what that means is I know I'm undeserving. My life is not about me. My life is about everybody but me. And if you don't understand that, suppose you're a father or a mother and you have children, right? Young parents often try to put the kid to sleep so they can go do what they want to do. As they get older, they realize something. Hey, my life has now become the nurture of these children. And so what they do is they throw their life away and they sow everything into the child. It's what they do. So they're not trying to put them to sleep. They're training them up in the way they should go. When that takes place, that child is truly nurtured. When a parent seeks to have their child go much further than they went, that child is truly nurtured. But when a parent is thinking of themselves and trying to put the kid to sleep so they can go do what they want to do, the child is going to be missing elements. And it happens that way. That's the difference between a mature parent and an immature parent, or a parent that just doesn't know these things. Once a repentant heart is developed, the Lord will continue to open your eyes as you're able to handle it, stage by stage, never all at once. All at once would destroy you. Stage by stage makes the cross that much more important until the day comes when everything is the cross to you, when that act at the cross means so much to you that nothing that will manifest in your life is discouraging. That's what happens. And again, it's not something we do. We initialize it through an acknowledgement of our shortcomings. Because even in doing that, as being honest, sometimes we cover up for our own inabilities to do things. But when we're open with the Lord, totally open with the Lord, things start happening. God is a God of truth. If we approach him in truth, we approach him. But if we approach him with a half-truth and we know what we do, right? Not disclosing all, still trying to act like we have it under control, trying to act our way to the throne, meaning we try to emulate somebody else to approach the throne, that's disingenuous. That doesn't work. When you are 100% yourself, wide open to the Lord, ready, and you can see that cross, he will enhance your vision as far as righteousness goes, to see the truth. And upon seeing that truth, it is heaviness, and you will lose all desire for sin. So much so, the same things you did an hour before, no one could ever tempt you into doing again. See, the Lord said, and the Bible teaches, that a man is drawn away and tempted of his own lusts. So what you desire inside is what you're going to fall prey to. Do you guys hear that? What you desire inside is what you have fallen prey to. That's exactly what Satan uses to hook you, is what you desire inside. When you have a repentant heart, your desires change. They're not the same anymore. Thus, you can no longer be tempted. You can't. That's the difference. Now you guys have it. Hopefully you can employ it. Because I tell you, the differences are stark when compared to our approach. that often leaves a person bitter. A lot of people know there's a bitterness connected to their lives in some way, some situation in the past or something like that. That root of bitterness is a cancer to you. To rid yourselves of that is to call upon the name of the Lord in truth by being open and honest with him 100%. Disclose everything. He already knows. But if he already knows and we cover it up, we're not approaching him in truth, are we? Please think about that. If the Lord already knows, but we still do not want to disclose it to the living God through prayers by way of Christ, we're not approaching him in truth. See, the Bible, even our worship sometimes can be disingenuous, because we can act like we're thankful for something when we just complained about it the hour before. And if it states in the Bible that God is spirit, therefore we must worship him in spirit and in truth. And if the Lord said, don't pray, don't think you're going to be heard for your many words, but say your prayer in secret. If the Lord said that, then this is a genuineness he's talking about. Disclosing by way of truth everything about yourself in the privacy of your own home. In your secret place means deep within yourself. In the place nobody else can touch, disclose everything. Never try to act like somebody else, but disclose everything. When you do that, you'll notice pride right away. Anything we defend of ourselves is done by pride. Why do I say that? Because if Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, then he defends us as we enter into his servitude. But he is our defense. We're not our own shield. He is our shield. You guys see the difference? That change of heart is when he changed our stony heart. A stony heart is a heart unwilling to change. The heart that says, I already know how to do it. Nobody can advise me in this. When you change from that heart to that flesh heart, a flesh heart is a heart that's able to change. And the Lord gives you that. A stony heart, to keep a stony heart, you must agree not to change. To agree not to change means we can become so stubborn and prideful, we'll say, nobody can teach me anything, I already have it right. That's why at the onset of COT, I said one thing: I will always remain teachable. If the day comes when I am no longer teachable, I have slipped a long way off the path of righteousness. That means I can hear anyone. But everything goes through Christ Jesus. The Lord takes care of judgment and everything else, the big stuff. He didn't call me to judge anything. He called me for something else. But I want you to notice not only that, but how that he uses us in our days of iniquity for other things. Because a lot of people ask, well, if God's children are forgiving all the time, then how is there going to be any justice in the world? God has set up people for justice. Just as he used Pharaoh. Just as he used King Nebuchadnezzar. And these were not holy men. These were unholy men. Just as he used them in the capacity of judges to pass judgment upon a person, and he would touch their hearts to do specific things, he has also done the same in the world. So if you ever meet a judge, right, that is very cruel, very harsh, your Father's involved in that judge when it comes to you. He already said that. Even though they're not in the realm, right, of God's righteousness as you can see it, they're still being used. You have to understand that. He has already set up elements. He has given them a heart. For those who are called to defend this nation, he's given them a heart. See, they haven't been called to a fullness of servitude yet. And in that time when they have not been called to a fullness of servitude, they're out there fighting so that you can still have your freedoms to learn about the word of the Lord. Because the day democracy leaves is the day the Bible leaves. Do you know that? So they're out there fighting so that you can still have relative peace, to continue to read the word on your own, to access information on the internet you wouldn't otherwise ever see. There is nothing held back from the saints right now. Nothing. The problem is everything is in such, well, it's too much freedom, so much freedom that we start to complain about small things. It's the old adage. If a person who is full goes into a restaurant, they're going to be handed a menu and they're not going to be able to decide what they want. And when they order something and get it, they're going to complain about it. Why? Because they're already full. You take a person who's starving to death. You can show them a menu. I can assure you they're not going to spend a bunch of time on that menu, but they're going to get anything on there. And when they eat it, they're going to say, thank God I have this food. They're going to be thankful for anything they get because they're hungry. Listen, when we're too full, we complain. And right now, even if you don't have much, you can be too full. Complaints reveal that we're too full. But when you're hungry, you become thankful for what you get. You become emotionally compromised in a good way. You guys see the difference? We've had it so good so long. We don't know what bondage is, what suppression is. People still have the freedom of speech. People have all their rights, and yet we complain about the smallest things concerning rights. But if we were all prisoners of war, and we were set loose from a jail, but weren't allowed to speak, all of us would be thankful. I guarantee you we would have no complaints. We have been free a long time. We're a generation that's been born into this freedom and luxuries that why do you think so many people are trying to get to the U.S.? You were not born in some of these places that are oppressed. Those people that are from these oppressed places, you know what they do? They look at them. I've heard them. They look at Americans and they say, how spoiled are they? They have everything and they take it for granted. They have freedom. They can speak about anything and they use their voices to complain. Can you imagine what would happen if all the saints never complained again, but handled the business of the kingdom in the earth? My goodness, everything would change. And indeed, wait a minute, I read in the Bible that's exactly what's going to happen. It'll be the saints that go out and possess the kingdoms of this earth, and they'll be about their Father's business, and they won't have a complaint in their mouth, but great things. And when they have that great things, they're not going to put up with the funny business, but will purge evil wherever they find it. The ways of the Lord will be instilled in all places in this earth. That will last for 1,000 years. And after that 1,000 years is complete, Satan is going to be loosed from his prison. Go out and deceive the nations of the earth, again, the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog. They'll be gathered together for the great day of battle. And God himself will consume them in judgment. And that will be the end of the end. In eternity will be secure. And everything that did not get placed in eternity will be forever separated from the light. That process will happen. The Lord called us to serve him in that capacity right now. Is the world going to listen to righteousness? Not really. And when they don't listen, we serve as a witness unto them for things that shall surely come. So never worry about those who reject the message. Just make sure you deliver what Jesus asked you to deliver. Don't deliver your message. Deliver his. Carry his gospel. and you'll do well. Carry his gospel with respect, understanding what it is. And people will either accept or reject it, and live your lives according to it. Live as a witness of the gospel. Ladies be ladies, men be men. There's still time. Even though a shaking will most certainly come, there's still time. We can make some changes. This story is not over. And all of us, we see what's forming.